Hello. Hi, soul friends. Thank you so much for joining me today in this safe space. I'm so grateful that you're here. I'm so grateful for your existence. If you have ever felt uneasy at the thought of being alone or uncomfortable when you are alone, I see you. Learning to fall in love with my solitude dramatically transformed my relationship with myself. Before this evolution, I didn't see solitude as something as sacred, but rather something to be avoided. And while I had no issue spending short amounts of time alone, whether it was for self care or an errand, spending long, copious amounts of time by myself felt extremely awkward. It felt uncomfortable. And honestly, it just felt lonely. Because of this, I often filled the empty space with company that drained my energy instead of replenishing it, just to avoid being alone. I honestly thought that I needed another human being to accompany me in order to truly dance the dance of life. I was on autopilot and habitually avoiding myself without being aware of it. And back then, I would have completely denied this with my entire being and put it off and labeled it as extroversion as a way to avoid doing any kind of introspection. Then the pandemic hit and I was forced into isolation away from all of my social circles and literally any human contact whatsoever into the crippling silence of my childhood bedroom. It was tough, and I felt like I was trapped in the confines of my mind, spiraling into my thoughts and feeling like I was dwelling in complete darkness. Although I fell into the solitude against my will, the more that I spent time with myself and stopped fighting it is when I started to realize how worthy I was of that quality time. I began to fall so deeply in love with my own company and had a very strong understanding of my needs, my desires, my worth, that it actually became borderline impossible to return back to some of my old social circles. I realized that I no longer resonated with this lifelong label I had assigned to myself of extroversion. Instead, I understood myself as a being who equally needed healthy amounts of alone time as well as time spent with others who added to my foundation of joy. And so my hope is that by sharing some of the steps and insights that helped me find comfort and a deep romantic love for my solitude, that you too can cultivate a deep love for your alone time without having to rely on the company of others while also discovering yourself along the way. I want to start by saying that community is extremely sacred to me, and I believe that by immersing ourselves into the body of love that accompanies community can be extremely healing. But locating that sacredness and that love within yourself in your own company is just as important. Many of us grow up in the constant presence of others, immersed in families from the time that we're born, surrounded by siblings and in school systems, etc. Just existing in society is constantly being immersed in the presence of others. That being said, it is completely natural and a valid feeling to feel uncomfortable when thinking about solitude and immersing yourself into that space, as most of us just aren't used to it. We're not conditioned to be alone. We run in packs. But what helped me ease into the idea of solitude was realizing that everything that I need, everything that I seek is already located within. I truly began to see myself as this living, breathing universe. Within us are so many different worlds and these long, winding roads that lead to precious gifts that are just waiting for us to open. It's such an exciting thought to realize that you are a source to explore and gently unravel the thought that I alone am whole and overflowing. There are no voids that I cannot fill by the presence of love and awareness that lives within me. But in order to step into this version of you who is comfortable and even loves spending time alone, I think it can be helpful to really sit with the feelings and fears that exist around doing so. One of the greatest fears that I have had and still continue to deal with is the potential danger of being alone. As a woman, and especially a Black woman, there are a lot of things that I have to think about on a daily basis, and it can be hard to operate and frolic about when I have to think about my identity. If you are also someone who experiences that fear, I see you and I hear you, and those feelings are valid. And I empower you to find ways of accessing your solitude where you feel safe, where you feel held, and you aren't in this constant fear of your life. With that being said, the greatest life hack that we just don't talk about enough is feeling the feels. It starts there. Leading with holding space and facing how you feel first is kind of like laying down the primer before you paint the masterpiece. I used to avoid sitting with my feelings like the plague, and I would try to talk around them or talk myself out of them. The way I approached feelings was like this complex puzzle that I had 10 minutes to solve, and if I didn't solve it in 10 minutes, then I would just kind of like shove it under the bed. Over time, I started to realize that it was this very aggressive way of meeting myself, throwing rationale and logic at feelings, and that's not what feelings require, right? Feelings require being felt. But once I began really breathing into my feelings instead of clouding my internal space with these action-based thoughts, that's when I could feel the internal love and progress happening within me, which therefore helped me lean into things such as solitude. And so to ease into exploring these feelings around being alone, some questions I like to ask are, how would you describe these feelings to someone who has never experienced it? And what are the stories that surface when you are alone or when you think about being alone? Just as you enter a new friendship with an open mind to who that person is and what may come out of that friendship, it's important to do the same thing with yourself. Being open-minded to the possibilities that could come about when entering a state of solitude. Oftentimes I'm alone. Those are my moments to really dive deep into my internal universe, to know myself just a little bit deeper. And in that, I am always surprised at how many revelations come about and ultimately evolutions that follow after. There's so much internal dialogue and confessions and even silliness that just has the space to breathe. It's quite relieving to hold a sacred space for yourself and allow yourself to bloom within it. I think going into it with excitement for what could come out of it makes it a little bit less scary and more intriguing. I find it helpful to think about the things that you really love or like about yourself and writing them down or keeping the list just in a little box in your head, and lean into this list when you do start to spend time alone as a reminder that you are worthy, that you do like your own company, that there are things about you that you would like to lean into the magical essence of, that this time with yourself is one of value and not something to run away from. You are such a divine, magical human being. The idea of spending time with you should feel exciting. There are so many people who want to be in your company. They get to soak up all of the goodness that comes with your energy and your essence. But what about loving yourself by spending time with the aspects of you that you simply adore? It's just as important to reflect them back at ourselves and provide them an intimate space for them to be seen by you to you. With anything that's new or slightly uncomfy, I like to make it as easy as possible to venture into this new world where I do that thing that I never did before. And so when you're beginning to step into solitude, I like to picture it as how you would treat a first date. Take yourself out, intrigue yourself to take part in this relationship and to keep it going. Even if you are just spending the solitude at home, cozy, not really doing anything, adding things to the mix that make you feel good can inch your way into romanticizing your solitude. For me, this is always my ritual of tea. I make a cup of tea probably about 5 times a day. It just does something to my soul. It fills it with so much warmth and comfort. And so when I am in solitude, having that thing that just makes you feel held and makes you feel whole can hold your hand through this new experience. Another good hack is to take yourself out on dates where other people are present. So you're alone, but not fully. I actually recently just did this. I went to a creative circle workshop where I could explore what creativity meant to me and how it resonated with my soul. We were in community, but kind of doing these individual deep dives. It still felt like alone time, but surrounded by other people. So doing something like that can really help you ease into doing things alone, because showing up anywhere by yourself is always a bit scary. And especially if you've never done it before, it can really help stretch you in those ways. And every time I do it, I feel so full and proud of myself for showing up just as I am without needing the company of others to kind of secure that I am worthy or valuable. It's really this empowering feeling of I can move through the world on my own and still feel that I am worthy of being seen. Another good way to ease into solitude is actually by stepping into nature. That is typically the activity I engage in the most when I'm alone. I love to just come out here by myself and be with the divine, be amongst the trees and held by the winds. You will never feel alone out here. I think if anything, I feel more in company than I typically do when walking amongst society. It's a great practice to kind of get comfy and used to being with yourself. I think nature is the most gentle teacher, and there's a lot that you can learn about yourself when held in the mother's arms. I hope that this time together was helpful and nurturing, and that you feel a bit more equipped to venture into solitude and spending quality time with yourself. Remember that everything you seek is already located within, and that you are whole on your own. You're so worthy of experiencing the magic that is you. Treat yourself as a flower, being gentle and giving yourself grace as you venture into this new experience. I hope that you feel held by the divine and that the space within you feels like one of love and of safety and comfort that you can so gently ease into. I am sending you the biggest love hugs and all of my love. Thank you so much for your presence and the light that you shine upon the world. I love you so deeply, and I can't wait to see you next time. Bye.